Well, hello there, guys. How's it going? Welcome to my podcast. I'm so excited to be here with you on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. Let's do this. I hope you're having a phenomenal day, a phenomenal week. I want to come on here and talk to you today about grit. We've got a phenomenal guest that I'm going to bring on our show. Let's have a good time. Let's let loose and let's make it happen together. Let's thrive through grit. With that said, I'm going to bring on a phenomenal guest, someone who is a TEDx speaker, professional in their own right. They are a life coach, an entrepreneur. They are thriving through grit, and it's time to hear from them. So, with that said, it is my delight, my honor to bring onto this show Mark Cordone, who is a phenomenal TEDx speaker and rock star in his own right. Welcome, Mark.
It's good to be here. And by the way, game recognized game, Dr. White.
Yes.
Same for you. I'm so stoked to be here talking about grit today.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I'm so thankful to have you on the show. And, so many people are going to be picking our brains and picking your brain today. They're going to want to know. Talk to us about who you are. How
Yeah.
did you get to where you are? So tell us, Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my background is in positive psychology, which is not about 24/7 happiness and all that kind of stuff and
Okay.
Goldilocks type of stuff. Positive psychology is really about understanding that we go through a whole lifetime of emotions and how can we
Mhm.
actually capitalize on those things, feel
Right.
through it, right? Background, my parents came to the United States and they
Uh-huh.
worked their way up through grit. And one of
Awesome.
the hardest things to do was say that I'm not going to become the doctor that you guys grew me to be, you know. And in fact, I wanted to go through my own gritty experience as well. I didn't want to have a silver spoon in my mouth. And so it
Right.
took some time and it took some focus. And what I love about today is in talking about grit and talk about where I'm going. When it comes to grit, I've got two things that come to mind. And I know, Dr. White, that you've heard this before. Number
Mhm.
one is a sense of purpose, a passion, right?
Right.
Inevitably, when we go and we are passionate about something, we're going to hit walls, right? And so
Right.
the second piece is this idea of resilience, being able to push through. And when you
Right.
have your passion for life mixed with your resilience, to me, that's what grit is. Being
Exactly.
able to push through things regardless of how hard they are, knowing that in your mind, your vision, this passion is exactly where you want to go. And through the tough times, grit carries you through that. So yeah,
Wow.
let's go. Let's go. That's all
So
I'm saying.
So
Let's go.
how did you first recognize that passion when you began on your journey, and how did grit help you through your personal journey? Mark, talk to
Oh
us.
my gosh. So a whole lot of things. I think number one, um, being able to say I don't know was a big part of my
Wow,
journey.
that's
So
excellent.
people would oftentimes ask me, right? Well, do you want to be like your parents? Do you not? And I just be like, I don't know. I want to have the capability and the freedom to explore, to be curious, to know what I
Right,
don't want and to know what I want. And so when it came to sort of using grit early on, it was difficult because a whole bunch of people wanted a whole bunch of answers from me, and I didn't
right.
have them yet. At 18 years old, going to college, for me it was difficult to, declare a major even, you know.
Yeah, wow.
And so yeah, and so in terms of how I used grit moving forward, um, I actually, to be honest, I don't know if I used grit going forward. Like, if I ever came to something hard, I think that my mind would make an excuse to be like, "Oh, if this is hard, you shouldn't be pushing through it. You should be finding things that are easier,"
Oh,
you know,
interesting, right.
right? And and I think in terms of finding things that I love, it lights me up to talk positive psychology. It lights me up to see someone have that aha moment. And I'm seeing your head go up and down like
Yeah,
this,
right.
India. To have those moments are worth pushing through. And
Yes.
some of the first things that I remember getting crystal clear about was sort of social justice issues. Here I was. I
Right.
loved neuroscience. I was in college, majoring in neuroscience. I loved it. But what I really loved on a higher level was, what can we do to really get folks who are not at the table at a hoity-toity college that I'm at, to get them
Mhm.
to start telling their stories. And what I
Wow.
realized soon, quickly after, was even in my family, like my cousins in the Philippines, they are not pockets that roll deep. And so they don't also have access that I was afforded. And so I remember the questions being, what does this mean to be a person sort of where I am right now, Filipino American, figuring it out? There was a grit there, but also at the same time, what does it mean to also to give my cousins access to what it
Right.
is that I have access on? I remember right before here we are. I don't. You've never heard this story. I was in my sophomore year of college in Atlanta, and I was talking to my cousin. He was from the Philippines, and I was like, "Cuz I don't think I want to go into college anymore. You know, I think
Wow.
I'm gonna transfer to the University of Florida, which is literally where I was gonna go, and I think I'm gonna go there." And he was like, "Dude, you have like the biggest opportunity in front of you, and like I would give a day in your shoes
Mm.
to live your life." And here I'm being like, whatever, dude, you don't know my
Wow.
problems. Yeah, that was over Christmas break, and by January he was gone. He
Wow.
right. And so
So
it
sorry to
was,
hear that. Yeah.
oh yeah. And what I owe to him is really being able to push through. It was that second piece that my cousin gave me to be like, yo, I am in a place to have this privilege of being
Wow.
like pushing through things. And that's
Right.
really where grit started to come into play.
And so, you're talking about pushing through. What is your
Mm.
specific definition, Mark, of grit? Now, if you guys are just joining the podcast, I've got here Mark Cardone on here with us. He's a TEDx speaker, he's an entrepreneur, a life coach. He does a lot with positive psychology. So, talk to us. What is your definition of grit?
Yeah, again, grit is I'm going to say it multiple times. It literally is knowing what you've been brought to this earth to do that lights you up and pushing through it every single day, right?
Love it.
Resilience, I think of as this. I don't have a, a goldfish bowl in front of me, but I think of resilience as sort of this this bowl, and you fill it up with M&Ms, and through the day you're taking M&Ms out, right? And at the end of the day, you have maybe an empty bowl or a half empty bowl. That's resilience. You do not
Wow.
have unlimited amount of resilience. And so when it comes to grit, you have unlimited purpose, but you have limited resilience. So given sort of the way that these are playing off of each other, you will always need to be using resilience. You will always need to be using passion, but there will always be times that you need to regroup. So grit gets you forward, and then other things like proactive self-care are absolutely
Beautiful.
necessary to move through life with grit.
Right.
And so, just knowing your purpose is not good enough.
It's not.
Being, you know, and
Right.
there's a lot of cool things. We're recording right now in January, right? Where a lot of
Right.
people are making some
New Year's
some of
resolutions.
those
Right.
resolutions, right?
Right.
Grit to me is knowing I'm going to walk forward. I come to a wall,
Beautiful.
and here in my journey, I can sit on my butt and wait for Prince or Princess Charming to get me to the other side.
Right.
Or I can take my backpack, which is full of apples and full of
Right.
what keeps me alive, and I throw it on the other side of that wall. To me, that
Beautiful.
is grit. That is
Right.
grit.
Right.
And a
Exactly.
lot of people are like, you got to keep banging into that wall. You can, but for me, what grit looks like is, what are other options there for me? Can I go and dig below that wall?
Right.
Maybe someone's there that's like holding a door open for me to
Right.
walk through. So I think that's one of the biggest things about grit, India.
I like how you said that, how what are other options? And, I had the opportunity during my TEDx to talk about grit, and I kind of came up with the formula for it for all of us.
Yeah.
Great resilience in time. So, through that resilience, you're able to kind of navigate through those other options. So, talk to us about a time that, you were up against the wall in your personal life or in your professional journey, whatever, and you had to get grit to kind of get you out of a rut so that you can
Oh,
continue to succeed. Talk
oh.
to us about that. What does that look like?
It looks like for me, it looks like a whole bunch of hard and difficult, right?
Yeah.
And so, one of the, if not one of the most profound personal or professional journeys that I was on, was I was in higher education, right?
Mhm.
Also at the same time, PhD program. I think we just talked about this yesterday
Yes.
about
Right.
a PhD program, and what really began to sort of resonate through my body, because I also think purpose is embodied. Your
Right.
body lets you know when you're in it and when you're not, right?
Right.
I began to realize that I really wasn't that keen on becoming a school administrator in a college.
Right.
And the more and more I thought about it, it became evident that I was not going to want to do those things. And here I am internally being like, am I just being a little baby here? Um,
Hmm.
or is this really something that I don't want to continue with?
Wow.
It was a little bit of both. I was being
Right.
a baby and I didn't want to continue with it.
Right.
Now, if I were to leave or be forced out of the nest, I wouldn't know where I wanted to go, and I was
Mhm.
forced out of the nest.
Right.
And as I was falling from the nest, figuring out what do I do in this next part of life, the first things that I leaned into was what my body was telling me. What do I want to do on a regular basis
Wow.
without getting paid?
Powerful.
Uh, a positive psychology was where I wanted to go. And I
Right.
also wanted to create interventions through positive psychology that also worked with social change. A lot of the social change things that come out at times are very angry, and I understand
Yeah.
why, but it doesn't need to be like this 24/7.
Right.
Can we use grit? Can we use positive psychology to bring about change, social
Yeah.
change in joy? And
That's
that was really,
powerful.
yeah, and that's where I moved out of wanting to, be in a PhD to thinking about what does a structure that works for me look like? Because
Right.
when I can create that structure, then I can utilize grit and resilience even more. Not so many M&Ms come out because I
Right.
love what I'm doing.
So
Does that
then,
make sense?
yes, now talk to us about like, so how did you strategize through knowing, okay, it's okay to close this door because it's not my purpose and to
Yeah.
go into another door without feeling like regret or resentment or, you know, having a sense of a fear of failure even for the next door. How did
Yeah.
you walk through that and mentally
Yeah.
take that in through grit? Talk
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
audience about that because I'm sure there are so many others dealing with the same thing right now.
Yeah, that's a really good question, India. I think one of the biggest things was no matter what position I was in, um, it still sounds a little bit corny to this positive psychology coach, but truly applying gratefulness in my practice, understanding that I
Wow.
wanted to be in this position. When I had that social, or when I had that a PhD, and when I had that role in higher education, I
Right.
wanted out, and I was out.
Yeah.
So to think to myself and be like, yo, like, this is hard, this is difficult, but it was hard and it's difficult, and this is
Yeah.
what I brought upon myself, which is why I'm grateful,
Right.
right? I think starting with that was one thing, and then number two, understanding that just because I'm not doing something now doesn't mean that I couldn't derive value from it.
Right.
So to be able to look at a diversity program that I put together, or to be able to look at a
Beautiful.
paper that I wrote in a student affairs class about
Right.
positive psychology, I still could use those things. And being
Right.
able to use those things and incorporate things into what it is that I'm doing now was a big deal. I know that your idea of I'm very much like your idea: great
Mhm.
resilience in time.
Right.
And that's the time for me
That's
to
the
show
time.
great resilience, right?
Right. And the thing, Mark, is that sometimes we think, oh, I've got to get it done within 2 weeks or within
Yeah.
6 weeks. It might take you 2 to 3 years. So I was telling you about this. Guys, I had a project, a book that I was sitting on for about 3 years. And I had went to pitch a leader about this book. And I was turned down. I was told that it was not a good idea. It wasn't a good fit. And it really kind of was heartbreaking. And I didn't know if I can kind of get out of that rut of disappointment and that rut of regret, feeling like I missed the mark because I wasn't able to finish or launch that book in a time frame that I thought was best.
Yeah.
But 2 to 3 years later, I was able to effectively, successfully launch that book and help leaders even today because I refuse to allow that dream to die.
Mm,
And just like you're talking, Mark, it's like you
yeah.
refuse to allow your dream of success to die, your dream of giving back into helping people to die. And so how would you help other people with this example? Like, how do you help them to cultivate grit
Mm.
in their own lives? Talk to me.
Yeah, wow, that is so I think a couple things here. And it comes from the work of Bronnie Ware, right?
Hmm.
And this has to do with regrets and to be
Yeah.
proactive about not having regrets, right? She wrote in her book about some of the things that people were saying at the end of their lives.
Hmm.
Number one, I wish I spent more time with people I love. I wish I wish I had more fun in my life. Um, I wish I would have done the things that I wanted to do rather than what society expected of
Right.
me. All of those things to me can be coupled with grit and really
Wow.
bring forward this sort of cultivation of grit by knowing, yo, I'm doing things because I'm having fun. I'm doing it with people who I love, and I'm doing things that I love. Bronnie talks about a whole bunch more, but really to truly cultivate grit, help like that happens when you derive meaning in the situation.
Right.
Hard does not mean bad, you know.
Right.
And in many ways, to the things that we want to do the most are hard. The way
Right.
to get through them is grit. So in
Wow.
terms of cultivating grit, I think number one is to really do a nice autopsy of what's working, right? Not
Yes.
focusing on what is what's not working and those sort of things. You should focus on that, but really focusing on and being grateful for what's working. So for
Right.
me, when I left that organization in higher education, I needed to focus on number one is what's working. What's
Right.
working is that next week I'm not going to go in dreading the job that I had. It had
Right.
nothing to do with the organization, by the way. It was a great organization. I
Right.
just wasn't there anymore. Right. So
Right.
being able to say, yo, like, I really am grateful for this allows
Right.
me to push through a little bit more. Um,
Exactly.
so, and a lot of people talk about it. It's okay to not be okay. So
I love
have
that.
grit, to have grit is that form of it's not fully
Yes.
okay yet, but I'm still gonna push through.
Beautiful. And the thing is, it's that resilience in time,
Yeah,
great
yeah.
resilience. So, Mark, when did you realize that it was okay to not be okay? And how did you use that to
Oh,
cultivate that
wow.
grit?
Yeah, wow. I think that happens quite a bit, not being okay, and I'm not sure if you and I talked about this, but life is meant for those ups and downs,
Yes. Yes.
right? And I think being able to cultivate grit when you're on the top, right? Oh, I'm great, blah 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 blah. Here I go. Life is turning around. It
Right.
never turns around. There will be those spikes up and then the drops, right? And
Yeah.
to be able to cultivate grit, one of the biggest things is cultivate it when you're in a good spot. you know,
Right.
don't just cultivate it when you're crap out of water,
I
right?
like that.
And
Right.
then also when it feels like your worst day, what you get to look at in
Right.
gratefulness is if this is my worst day, the worst day is over and tomorrow is going to be a less worse
Beautiful.
day, right?
I love
And
that.
that's also where grit comes into play,
Yes.
knowing that if this is your worst day, I'm just gonna be gritty and make it less gritty tomorrow. You know,
Wow.
I'm not less gritty tomorrow, less crappy tomorrow.
Right. And
And so every single day
right.
that passes that you use grit can become less crappy. And then when you're on the top, cultivate the grit. So there's this sort of knowingness that you get to um, observe and even
Yeah.
take in the
Right.
emotions of your daily life, but also in the long run, maybe grit is getting you out of those really crappy areas.
I
So
love
like,
that.
yeah,
Yes.
putting it into perspective, I think that's a great way of, I guess, thinking about it and putting it great resilience in time. In time, it's going to go up and down, and
In
knowing that
time.
is half the battle.
And being okay with that cycle because what happens is sometimes in life we're expecting to just stay on that high, but we have
Yes,
to respect that there are valleys, there are lows. And what
absolutely.
we do is if we're able to take that sense of joy and gratitude and thankfulness that we have on the mountaintop and take that with us to feed off of that in the valley, that will get us through. And so I've been able to use that when I was going through a time, and I was helping with my mom and her situation when she was passing from pancreatic cancer. It was tough because it was a low for all of us. But I would take memories of the good times of when we used to cook together at Thanksgiving, when she used to attend different things in my life, when I became a mother and she, was there to help, with certain things. I would feed off of those things mentally so that when that crappy emotional piece was there, I didn't let that sit there and get the best of me. So what happens that I found in my own life, and I don't know if you can attest to this, Mark, but whenever we allow depression to get the best of us and we don't have that positive reinforcement and that positive self-talk and those positive memories working for us, it could tend to try to really take us out, and it
Oh
really
yeah.
can just cause you to sulk and just not want to even get out of bed because you're just so consumed with the negative that's taking place instead of realizing that there's something good happening around the corner. If I just hold it out, like you said,
Yeah.
you never know. And I always tell people, take a risk at life, take a risk at tomorrow. And you don't know how great tomorrow really can be for you if you
Oh,
just take it out. So
absolutely.
how have you done that as well, Mark?
Oh, wow. Well, number one is having this conversation with you. Number one. Um, I'm actually going to talk about something that I haven't talked about in a lot of
Go
podcasts.
for it. Yeah.
And that's the idea that there's something larger than myself, you know,
Wow.
and, and,
Powerful.
that shows up as spirituality for me. And
Right.
usually one of the things is when I'm in my mire and it becomes about me and what I'm not getting, it becomes harder to work, grit or not, it just becomes harder, and one of the coolest
Yeah.
things that, in my coaching practice, and things that revolve around serving, um, if it's about me and what I'm not getting, I'm not doing a great job, and I'm
Mhm.
not what I would call
Yeah.
successful. However, no matter how bad or great the day is, if I know that it's coming from a place of value, I'm taken care of
Right.
emotionally, financially, like
Right.
intellectually, interrelationally, all of those things come easy,
Yeah.
and require less grit when I know that I'm a part of something greater than myself.
Right.
When I'm not part of something greater
Wow.
than myself and it's the Mark show, that's when I need to go and bust
Mm.
out the M&M jar, and it will go all the way to
Yeah.
empty. And so
Wow.
I think when it comes to some of those things, India, and this was just probably within the last 3 years, knowing that I'm a part of something that greater than myself, like there have been times that knowing has carried me to the next place,
Right.
you know and so, I don't have all the answers. What I do know is that when I feel great about something and I know that I can push through it, great things happen, and
Beautiful.
it hasn't let me down once.
Wow. And I think that what you're doing here is you're giving us a hope beyond our
Yeah,
circumstances. And you're
yeah.
saying, when you can't hope anymore within you and you can't hope anymore within the methods that you've tried, try looking beyond yourself. Like I know
Mhm.
for me, it's my faith. It's my faith in the Almighty
Yeah.
and in what the Lord has done in my life. And so for me, when like I remember when my brother had just passed away. So for you guys that are listening, I was homeless my last 2 years of high school. And during that homeless time of that transition, I unfortunately went through some grief. I lost 4 family members in the span of a month, including my brother. And so I remember just dealing with that. I was trying to get through the trauma of imagining him going through a car crash, imagining all
Yeah.
that, dealing with the funeral. And I had a final exam around the corner. And I remember, um, just not even knowing if I could have the mental capacity to think about math, when I had the death of my brother on my mind. Long story short, after his funeral, I went to take the exam. And in that exam, I remember just having enough grit to say, I'm going to do this for him. And so sometimes, when you go beyond yourself, you start setting some pretty dynamic goals where you tie those goals to people that have passed
Yeah.
on or to forces that are bigger than you. And so for me, I tied it to my creator and I tied it to my
Mm.
brother who was no longer with me because it was like my way of saying, if I don't know how to succeed within, I've got them beyond
Oh, so good.
to
Yeah.
keep me, motivated and to make me aim for something beyond me. And so
Yeah.
I remembered after I took that exam, I did do pretty well. I think I got an A, B's, whatever. And I remembered
We know
falling.
it was an A. Come on now.
I just, but I just remember, in that time, I was against one of those brick walls, those, how the schools have like the brick walls, whatever.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
was against the brick wall right outside of my classroom. And I remember just dropping down, just sliding down the wall with tears in my eyes. And I just said, bro, we did it. And I was thankful to God. And I remember telling God, I said, God, I believe that you're God and that you'll see me through this. I don't know how you'll see me through this. I just believe it.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to say to get me through that. And that was what was able to help me keep it all together and not lose my mind. And
Yeah.
so many people, Mark, are out here dealing with private battles, dealing with battles that are going to be revealed, sooner than later. And they need some support for when they are digging through and they're trying to figure out, how do I work through some of the toughest emotional times in my life? How do I work through disappointment? Or I went into a business deal and it flopped, or, I'm going through now divorce or grief and I don't know what to do. So to pull themselves up from that, what advice do you have for them regarding when they are facing what looks like impossible, or they're facing the worst nightmare?
Sure. I think number one is to breathe, right?
Yeah.
And I know that feels weird, but it is one of the first things to help get you out of like fight or flight, is to just breathe.
Yeah.
And wow, when it comes to those situations where someone feels hopeless, or someone feels like they're just completely down and out, I do think that's number one. That's where belonging to something greater than self comes in. And I think that's where you can just simply ask yourself two questions. Is this really what I want to do?
Yeah.
Because if you don't, guess what? You can just leave. You can leave. We have the option, And I would always, when I would be teaching a master's level course on education and folks are just suffering, I wanted people to understand, you can leave. You can leave if you feel like you're suffering. That's not something that needs to happen. And also at the same time, can this be done in a more joyful, easier way? Right? There's a piece of literature by Price Pritchett called U Squared, and it's talking about living a life filled with grit, filled with purpose, filled with joy and ease. And one of the things that he talks about, I'm answering your question through here, India, is that he's sitting having he's sitting having a lemonade one Sunday morning, and he sees a fly. And he sees a fly that's stuck inside of his porch, and it keeps going up against the window. And Price is watching this fly, knowing that this fly is going to die trying the same thing over and over again. He puts his lemonade down.
Wow.
He opens up the screen door, and all the fly needs to do is back up and realize that this key to freedom is just about stopping what they're doing and going through that door. And I think one of the first things that I think about, and hopefully more people can think about, is how do I change my perspective to feel like a situation is life and death, and I need to use the same way every single time, only knowing that I'm going to burn out trying, versus me just backing up, taking a breather, and saying, what are the other alternatives that allow me to continue living happy, joyous, and free, versus living to die, living to do the same thing until that fly expires. And I think we can take a nice long look at, yes, if you're hopeless, absolutely. But before you go trying the same thing, back up and see if there's something that's wide open for us. Does that answer the question?
Beautiful. And yes, it does. And thank you for that amazing advice, Mark, because I'm telling you, we're just going to keep it real on here as we talk about getting gritty, People
Mhm.
need options and answers as to how they can be gritty through
Yeah.
hard times, through hopelessness. And this is exactly what we
Yeah.
need to hear today. We don't need any more fluff. We need results. We need
No.
answers. We need
Yeah.
solutions. And I'm so thankful for all of your expertise on positive
You're welcome.
psychology and how you've been coaching people and helping people through hard times like that. And, I mean, for you to say, back up, guys, take a breather and ask yourself, what are the other alternatives? If you keep trying to get accepted in that same group, if you keep trying to get into
Yeah.
that same door and it's
Yeah.
been closed, be
Yeah.
honest with yourself. Learn to let go, release it, and say,
Yeah.
what are other alternatives? What are my other options? What else can I look into?
Yeah.
The closed door doesn't mean that you're a failure. You know
Yeah.
what I mean, Mark? And so it's like, how do you
Totally.
help people with that too? Like sometimes I'm like, man, the door is closed and I can't see any other door right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying because maybe this might be my year. This is a new year, right? This is
Yeah.
my year. This is my time to shine. New year, new me. But
Yeah.
maybe you got to just let go of that and try something else
For now, right?
for now.
For now. And
Right.
I think your conversation about, or your story about, 2019, you wanted to move forward with something, it
Yeah.
didn't happen. You were able to table that, and it came around full circle.
Yes.
I consider that one of the moments where, you were going head first into that mirror or that wall, the wall, and you just found that door. It just opened for you. And
Right.
sometimes a little bit of patience helps. I have something before I know that we're going to be wrapping soon, but before we completely go, I wanted to bring this up as well. Grit is fantastic for the individual, and one of the things that we can and maybe should consider moving forward is, how do we create communities,
Beautiful.
ecosystems, a world
Oh,
where part of the values of the of the culture is to be gritty. And so rather than having one or two people in a community be gritty, what if we were to have that just part of the culture of the community to be
right.
gritty? So when something
Wow.
comes up, everybody knows to move forward, with grit. Everybody
Wow.
is lending their M&Ms to other people, keeping them
Wow.
full, and what does that look like? Well, I would say this, like, I am definitely tuning into your episodes from here on forward, because I know what you stand for, Dr. India, and I can't wait to see some of these things and conversations about grit in communities happening as well.
Yes. And you're spot on because, we're talking about trying to increase the graduation rates. And,
Yeah.
they talk about how at least 2 million kids are dropping out of college every year, dropping out of school every year in the United States alone. And, in order to kind of disrupt those
Mhm.
numbers and to bring about a change that we can tangibly grasp and celebrate together, we're going to have to start bringing grit into our communities, grit into the classrooms, grit into the universities, because there's too many reasons for students to not be successful. We have
Right.
to help them thrive through grit. And yes, I know we're about to wrap up. But I wanted to first just remind you guys, listen, Mark Cardone is out here providing services, helping people with so many different things of positive psychology. He's coaching, he's a TEDxer. I mean, it's so many different things. And so with that said, I want you, Mark, to leave us one last bit of, grit nugget for us. How can we take grit to thrive?
Mm, yeah. A lot of things. um, how we can take grit to thrive.
Yes.
So
Thriving in
many
life.
things.
Yes.
I think one of the biggest things again is stepping back and taking a deep breath. When you're languishing, the absence of languishing is not flourishing. So if you need to go to a community of care, whether it be friends who have your back, there's a lot of people who don't want you to succeed. Why do you need to be a part of that, right? But
Right.
being able to get to a place where you're talking to a counselor to help get rid of that
Beautiful.
languishing, right? But then when it comes to flourishing, grit comes from a place of, number one, understanding your vision, because if you don't like plan, you're just going to fail, right?
Right.
Number two, understanding that it's okay to fail, you know,
Yes.
having that growth mindset of being like, I gave everything that I had, and it didn't go the way that I wanted. But
Right.
what is the meaning that I can derive out of this? So tomorrow I can show up as a better self, a better
Right.
person, right? And then I think it's a big one. Using grit, but also when you reach where you're going to reach, savoring it,
Yes.
savoring the moment. A lot of people will get to where they want to reach and know that, okay, I got to use grit again to get me to the next level. Sure, you're
Right.
probably going to use grit again, but
That is
in
so
between,
good.
like, go and savor it,
Right.
you know? So I just
Right.
think that there's a whole lot of things, but I was just to say this in a nutshell, those would be the things that I would, I guess, recommend, or,
Wow.
put it into your life.
That's
Give
so
your time.
beautiful. And
Yeah.
I can think of that in my own life. That last one, savoring the moment. That's one where,
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, what's the next thing? Instead of really
What's the
slowing
next book?
down, and as business leaders and educators and leaders out there,
Yeah.
we get caught up in that. Like, okay, we met that goal. Now, next thing,
Really?
if you're a principal at a school, okay, we've got those numbers up. Next thing,
Yep.
let's focus on the next group of students. Let's focus on those teachers and their professional development. Sometimes you got to slow down, go order the cake, go order you some soda and some,
Wawa.
you know what I mean? From Wawa, right? Or, but the thing is, after your New Year's resolutions, of course, because I know so many people are talking about, oh, I want to do this or lose weight and whatever, but, making sure that you still celebrate, because
Yeah.
we don't pat ourselves on the back enough. We're afraid to shine. We're afraid to, just be honored. We're afraid, and you're so right with that. People have to slow down. We have to slow down, leaders, and savor the moment. Also realizing, yes, it is okay to fail, because failure is not final. It is a part of your journey towards ultimate success, which means you have to continue to push. Listen, everyone has to continue to take grit with them every day.
Yeah.
And so,
absolutely.
with that said, Mark, thank you so much for joining the Let's Get Gritty podcast. And before we wrap it up, do you have any upcoming projects that we can promote or celebrate?
I do. I've got I have a really cool program that I've been working on for years called the Joy Revolution. And that's where you
Awesome.
use joy to as a leadership tool to create social change. Got a lot of cool folks on board. We've had people restructure their businesses, people become
Wow.
TEDx speakers, and so I'm happy to reintroduce that in 2023. All you got to
Excellent.
do is email me if you're interested, Mark at
Yes.
markcordone.com.
Okay, so how can we say that again, because I'm going to put it up for those that are watching.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Mark with a C
Uh-huh.
at markcordone.com. For your listeners, India, like, give a nice little discount, maybe 50% off. Like, what are we
Awesome.
like? Yeah. So
Wow, guys, did you
yeah.
guys hear that? So
Yeah.
Mark is telling you right now, he's got a phenomenal program that's turning businesses around, helping people get the success that they need, helping people to land TEDx opportunities. Okay. And reach him while you can, because I know this is going to fill up for sure.
Yeah.
At markcordone.com. Again, it's Mark with the C at markcordone.com. Mark, thank you so much for being a part of the Let's Get Gritty podcast. And for all of my visitors, thank you so much. You can reach me if you want to be on the podcast next week or whenever in the future. Let's make it happen. Reach me at www.india-white.com or send me an email with your photo and bio and podcast interest to india.white.123@gmail.com. Let's get gritty with it. Continue to take grit with you, and let's thrive together. Take care, guys.